Tax season can be stressful for all of us, but what about the added stress of knowing that artificial intelligence and ChatGPT are being utilized by scammers to up their game when it comes to cyber fraud? I talked to security expert from Checkpoint, Greg Pepper, about what they're doing and what you can do to prevent yourself from becoming a victim.
Yeah, when you think of all of us, whether they're for individual taxes or business taxes, this is the time of the year that something's got to be filed. We're hoping to get money back, or maybe we're expecting to pay money. And there's countless people out there to help us. And a lot of them are very good people. But some people, unfortunately, negative actors, take advantage of these situations and try and target people to either defraud them of their refunds, potentially fraudulently help them for tax advice and filing and maybe never actually file, or file on their behalf and then capture their tax dollars. But this is just one of many examples of cyber fraud and crime that are happening across the globe today.
And with this, type of thing, particularly, around this time of year, is there maybe a segment of the population that's more vulnerable or more likely to be susceptible to typical scams?
Yeah, I think people that have financial assistance helping them, account. Is not to say there isn't high-end white-collar crime that happens every single day. But the low-hanging fruit in the underbelly are those that are often less privileged, or maybe don't have the financial means to gain access to those experts, and are potentially really hoping and expecting and needing those funds back, or other types of benefits, enrollment information, etc., that they could benefit from. And people are often targeting stealing those individuals' monies themselves.
So what are some of those ways that they're targeting individuals? I mean, we're all used to getting, the emails. Don't click on a link if you don't know where it's coming from, but I know it's much more robust now.
Yeah, well, it's not just emails. When you think about, all of us, we live and die via our telephones, right? So you can get the text message, or you can get the email, or maybe somehow you're, on a list that was compromised. So now all of a sudden, the list of 1,000 people receiving food benefits, or maybe, as an example, someone that if I was a criminal actor, I might be targeting a known list of people that are receiving certain benefits, whether it's lifting the physical ATM cards they're receiving, duplicating them, and then using them for other fraudulent transactions, right? This is just one small example of a much larger ecosystem of cybercrime out there.
So in particular, people who are receiving benefits like state benefits and EBT card, they're at risk?
Well, anyone is at risk, whether you're receiving those benefits and or not. But if you think about it, that's a targeted pile of cash and assets that's easily potentially ascertained and duplicated and dipped into.
So how is it that they're going about that, getting that information and getting access to the assets, as you mentioned?
Yeah, sometimes it's, filing on people's behalf and, receiving the benefits cards and removing them from the mail before the end users have had them. Maybe it's filing it with a fraudulent address so that it goes to a different actor's location where I can receive the cards directly. In a more sophisticated scheme, people might be using card skimmers in various ATMs or point of sale transactions. Remember, a lot of these debit cards don't have the more sophisticated chip and pin technologies like our American Express and debit cards, as an example. Therefore, they can only be swiped. And the information that's on the magnetic stripe is easily obtained if you have the right technology and know-how.
So, and I want to get into ways to prevent it, but before we do that, I know particularly this year with the advent of all of the AI tech that's out there, including ChatGPT and services like that, I know that's made it a little bit easier for the scammers, or at least picked up their game a little bit. Is that right?
Yeah, these are transformational technologies that are available for both white hat and black hat use. And whether it's companies like Checkpoint and how we use it to enhance our threat detection capabilities, but bad actors can also use these technologies to help advance, more sophisticated attacks in a much shorter duration of time, right? They're unable to use these AI and machine learning based capabilities to help build targeted campaigns, to run extortion, to run brute force attacks, potentially manage these botnets, and in essence, have 1,000 additional workers because of that computational power of cloud computing today, which has only accelerated the influence and capabilities of what things like artificial intelligence and machine learning have, at these bad actors' behavior.
So what's an example that somebody may encounter during this time that could be a result of using ChatGPT?
You mean an individual themselves having used ChatGPT?
Sorry, I mean, as far as somebody out there who may say get a text message, does it come in the form of a phone call, an email? Like, what's an example of something that somebody?
Yeah, it's really about what you've programmed your application and interactions to do. because when I talk to ChatGPT and these other AI technologies, I could craft a way that says, reach out to this person on Instagram and LinkedIn, right? I might reach out to them through SMS, or if I have email information as well. And it's very easy to impersonate senders. So people receive an email, they think it's coming from the originating source, but you have to trust and validate the recipient of that information. Again, we all get kind of the random texts on our phone, in addition to the calls for car warranties and university diplomas, as an example. But now I can use these machines to execute these at much greater scale.
And by greater scale, you mean sending them out to a lot more people at the same time?
Of course, yeah. I mean, there have always been robo dollars as an example, but think about robo dollars on steroids. And now, rather than just running however many calls per hour per day, digitally, I'm able to send millions, if not billions, of attempts to reach out through API integration to any of these applications that I've now programmed my, artificial intelligence and machine learning to execute.
I know one of the things too, that we've all been used to, those spam emails or texts, a lot of times the spelling's off. If you take a look at it, or the website's slightly off, you can figure out a
Absolutely.
little bit of ways. But I understand that now they're getting better at covering those issues up.
Well, yes, but I think also people don't do some of the due diligence. For example, when you mouse over the address, you can see the name, or verify that the URL matches the certificate. Most sites these days do have SSL encryption enabled by default, especially for all of your banking and other important types of online transactions, as an example. That being the case, especially as it comes to email, it's very important that you selectively scan or prevent yourself from opening an email inadvertently. That's why for us, our email security is actually one of our fastest growing businesses, because we're all targeted in a similar way, whether it's through my Gmail, my corporate Office 365, or any other email service that we're using out there.
Is there particularly a concern of people impersonating the IRS?
Oh, of course, because people are expecting an IRS, just like around the holidays, we're expecting that UPS or Amazon delivery, or Target or Walmart, as an example. And we're all moving very fast, and we kind of glance at our phone, and we're scrolling, and we're tapping, and next thing you know, you've accidentally tapped on an email that wasn't actually the IRS, but could be a potential bad actor. These things can deliver malicious payload, compromise your device, and then gain potential backdoor access to any of the information on it.
So what are some steps that people can do to protect themselves from this?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, there are security technologies both that our company and others out there have for mobile devices. And I don't think enough of us have security running on our Android and iOS devices, right? We're used to having antivirus on our laptops and our desktops, and they're not as effective as they once were. And that's a different conversation in how we protect, larger computing devices. But for many of us now, this is my most important computer in the world. So, whether it's ours, checkpoint.com, Zone Alarm, which is our consumer brand, competitive solutions, protect your mobile devices, right? Back up your mobile devices. They can have strong authentication or, biometric, although I know there's kind of some risk potentially about using the facial recognition, where there have been people that have been attacked, and then, facial recognition unlocked their phone, unlocked their online banking, and then people stole money digitally through their devices once they physically compromised an individual. But things like PIN codes are still best practice and easy to use and remember, that we should all be using as a multi-factor authentication.
Multi-factor authentication, that's definitely good to add that in there. And I think probably a lot of people don't do that. So you have that. I mean, are there telltale signs that someone can look for as well, in addition to getting some actual security on there? But if somebody sends an email, there are things to look for or a text message,
Yeah, no, clearly you
common things
mentioned
that people should do.
misspellings, things that kind of have similar look and feel. But again, you don't have to necessarily click on the sender. You can preview the URL, especially with the embedded links within an email, right? A lot of times those are going to have miscellaneous names that don't look familiar. Those are telltale sounds that if I'm receiving something from Wells Fargo Bank, as an example, and the URL says, Bank of Wells Fargo, I'm just making it up. That's probably a good telltale sign that this is some type of phishing attempt or something that I shouldn't be necessarily opening.
Anything else that you think people should know for this tax season in particular? With these next few days here.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're expecting some type of return, there's ways as well to reach out to the United Postal Service so that you'll see what mail you're going to be receiving in that day. I know that's very helpful for us if we're expecting something important. I get that day of notification and I know to either look for it at the end of the day. Maybe I ask my kids to take it in, but at least I know it's now been sent and I should now be on the recipient of it. This way, if I do not receive my tax return check or other benefit return check, I can reach out to that agency in a more timely fashion, noticing that has now not been delivered if that physically was ever taken from my mailbox, as an example.
I know there was one other thing I wanted to ask, and this is something I've been reading about, and I feel like a lot of people have been, and that's the use of basically deep fake phone calls, or not necessarily even deep fake, but having the phone side of an actual audio phone call happening, saying
Yeah.
the IRS, and has artificial intelligence helped, but made that better than it used to be?
Well, look, it's created new ways to create digital voices that emulate and replicate an actual user, as an example. And whether I'm using a music catalog or I'm using someone's auto phone tree, right? There's ways for us to both scrape audio, learn about these things, and then use the generative technology to create artificial calls, artificial voices, artificial bots, artificial dialers, as an example, that have more sophisticated replication of the person's actual natural language. When you think about whether it's on YouTube, as an example, I've presented at many conferences, right? So not that people are scraping my voice and behavior, but it's out there and possible. And if someone potentially wanted to harvest my previous online content, use it to train and learn that machine, as an example, it's possible to generate calls that look and sound like Greg, even though it's not actually Greg making that phone call.
Crazy. What's if somebody does think that they've become potentially a victim of this, thinking that they contact the IRS or answer a phone call, give out information, what should they do?
Look, if this was me, first and foremost, I would at least verify with kind of my initial banks, right? Things that handle my daily cash in and cash out, that my accounts are secure, that someone hasn't compromised that bank. And then I'd probably work out to my other most important, creditors' assets, especially in and around the IRS. I mean, they're very good at answering the phone. I know we like to, knock on the IRS, but they got millions of people out there to help us get through this tax season. And, they're definitely going to be answering the phone on your behalf.
Now, Greg mentioned a number of ways that you could protect yourself, but multi-factor authentication is widely believed to be one of the best ways to at least provide some amount of protection from someone getting into your phone. Highly recommended. I'm Greg Nibbler, Fox 12 Oregon.